This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Welcome to the show. It is Friday, December 19th, 2025, with less than a week till Christmas. Hope everyone's doing well and not too stressed out. And we are just a few days away from the big day if you celebrate it. And I got to say, as a parent, it is the best and the worst time of the year. It is the most stressful, just from a time and money perspective. It's just horrible. But if you are single or you don't have a family, then still, I mean, it is exciting. It's an exciting time of year, just different, as you'll see if you become parents. And it is, it's still a good time of year, really, just generally, if you put all the stress aside. It is one of the greatest times of the year. But there are some trade-offs for that, if you kind of catch my drift. And that said, we have a lot of wrestling to talk about tonight. As you guys have asked me questions, you've got a lot of things to go through. I'll get through as many emails as I can. I don't know if I'll get through them all. I always say that, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but we'll see what happens as we go through the show. We have a lot to talk about, as I said, and if you want to join us on Patreon, you can do that at patreon.com/WWE podcast for your ad-free experience. And let's get started. We're going to jump in, waste no time, and get to those emails, but I want to give a shout out to a new patron, Cam G. Cam, thank you for joining us over on Patreon. Alrighty, let's start out. Let's start out with patrons, of course. Patrons always do get that priority treatment. One of the very many perks you get over on Patreon. As, let's see here, we're going to start. I know I promised earlier this week. We're going to start with, let's see, Kat. All right, Kat, what do you got for me? Kat says, checking in after our in-person experience at Saturday night's main event in DC. First, let me say it was an awesome night. The crowd was in a great mood. There were tons of chants. It was a packed house full of fans. Sometimes events in DC are full of bored business suit-type people who got free corporate tickets, but that wasn't the case Saturday. These were real fans. The atmosphere in the arena was electric. Everyone could feel it. It was a special night. It was a pleasant surprise that John Cena did not kick off the event, so it gave me more time for the anticipation to build. Totally agree. The pop for Cody in person was way less than prior times we've seen him live, so the shine is definitely wearing off a little bit with the fans. I would say that in general, I think there is a downward trend with Cody and the interest of him being a babyface. But also that whole night belonged to John Cena. All the babyfaces, I think, got a muted reaction because everybody was just thinking about John Cena, and rightfully so. So let me tell you that Obafemi was a huge hit. He was so over with the crowd. The entire arena was chanting, Oba, Oba, way before Cody's song was over, and everyone was screaming as he stomped in. I went back and watched the Peacock broadcast after we got home, and none of that really came through on the sound edit. Yeah, you're right, it didn't. The match was fantastic. The athleticism of both men was on full display, and even though I love Drew, it was kind of a shame he interrupted. It was a shame, but it did make sense logically that you don't want either man to lose. You don't want your top champion to lose clean to the NXT champion, Obafemi, and you don't want Cody to then also stunt the momentum of Obafemi as well. So it's it is a disappointing kind of finish. I mean, DQs are overused in pro wrestling, so I think it did make this feel a little bit more flat because it's overused, but it was the right time to use a DQ because it then also furthers Cody and saves both Obafemi and Cody from losing the match. So I got it, but in person it did kind of stink. The crowd was also very over for Sol Ruca, although Bayley got some chance too. I didn't know anything about Sol ahead of time, but she was so fun to watch and clearly has a big career ahead of her. It was also great to see AJ Styles in person before his career wrapped up, although they really cut his entrance short, and the match felt short too. In person at least, it looked longer on TV when I watched. Special shout out to DJ Kuzmo keeping us updated for months and months about Joe Hendry because my kid and I have both been following along and we went nuts when he appeared. It was awesome. The crowd was so beyond hyped. It was also cool seeing The Miz and R-Truth in person. A fun little extra moment. Well, there you go, DJ. All that work you put in every week with your Joe Hendry report It's paying off. See? You get some real world results from real fans having a great time, and especially if it's a mother and son, as we have here. So cool. From our seats, the upper deck, we also had a good bird's eye view of the row seats in the front row where Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Elias, Booker T, Rob Van Dam, Kurt Angle, Trish Stratus, Mark Henry, and Michelle McCool were sitting, and it was just fun peeking at them all night as they were enjoying being fans like us. The crowd really went crazy for RVD and KO and for the picture of Vince in the video package. Huge pop. We all booed during The Rock's video, and anytime the Riyadh, Saudi Arabia advertisement came on, big boos. That's awesome. That tells me you have 20,000 people who are some of the most dedicated fans in the world. Why do I say that? Because these people, including yourself, who are there, paid top dollar to be there. And many flew in, drove a lot of miles, flew a lot of miles to be there just so they could say they were part of John Cena's last match. And that's how you know that you've got a real sample of what the fans feel, and that is cheering for Vince McMahon, which is just crazy but awesome. You have them cheering for KO, a huge pop for RVD. Those all came across, and it was really awesome to see them. And booing Riyadh's advertisements is just icing on the cake for me. That's awesome. So my hat's off to the 20,000 people in attendance for doing that. So overall, all the matches felt a little too fast. The night went by extremely quick. I wish it had been 3 hours instead of 2, which is kind of crazy. How are the PLEs now shorter than the weekly shows? And SmackDown's going to 3 hours next month. Again. So you're going to have more regular free TV, quote unquote, than you are PLEs in terms of length. You're going to have a weekly show that is longer than the PLE that it builds to. How is that possible? Something's out of balance here. I don't need a 3-hour show. I mean, I personally don't. I know in person, if you spend all that money, I understand that. But I think as a general principle, I am not of the belief that we need a 3-hour wrestling show. To me, I think it's overkill. It's too much. There's a lot of filler. It's not easy to do. I'm not a fan, but it's all about the revenue. More hours of TV means more money in WWE's pockets. That's really what it's about. That's the only reason they're doing that. So overall, let's see. Oh, I said the ending of Gunther and John Cena happened extremely sudden after so many close calls. We felt like we barely had time to react or prepare for it. The entire arena was chanting F you, Triple H, F you, Hunter, and you effed up. However, that sentiment was over quickly. Everyone went back into happy picture-taking mode and focused on getting out in loads of DC traffic getting out there. That must have been brutal, by the way. DC traffic, and I've been down there, especially around the belt, is brutal. I can't imagine what it was like trying to get out of there. I'm thinking there was a parking garage. Trying to get out of, if you waited and you didn't leave a little early to try to avoid it, I can't imagine what the scenario was like in a parking garage, trying to back out of your space while everyone's doing the same just to get out into more traffic to get to your highway that has more traffic. It's my personal hell among many. I have many personal hells. This is one of them. My other, and I came across it on TikTok, so I've got the algorithm right, is being at a party, being at a family party where it takes 30 minutes to say goodbye. You're with one of those families that takes like 35 minutes. Oh, all right, we're going to start saying goodbye. And then you make your rounds and you're looking at your watch and it's been 45 minutes. Yeah. Like, are we leaving? That's why I'm a big fan of the Irish goodbye. Huge fan. I can't promote it enough. Big fan of the Irish goodbye. I mean, when I'm, at parties or whatever, I'm a big fan. If I don't have any responsibility and it's not obviously my wife's family or whatever, I won't do that to them. I'm not a total jerk, but I'm a big fan of it. Big fan of that method of just like leaving out of nowhere. Just like an RKO out of nowhere. I'm out. It avoids all the awkward goodbyes and then the empty promises. Oh, we should talk more. We should text more. Oh, we'll catch up a little bit, which none of us do. Even if our intentions are good, it never happens because all of us have our own lives going on. And then you get back into your daily life and then days and weeks and months go by and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So I'm not into those empty conversations that lead absolutely nowhere. So Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent that is not about wrestling. So let's continue with your email, Kat. I agree. It disgusts me when they brag about the ticket sales because they set the base prices so high to begin with. I have plenty of sports and concert events in the same arena over the years, and I have sat in pretty much the same seats for $40 compared to $400 they charged me during the pre-sale. Yikes. Kat, I have to ask, was it $400 per seat? I'm guessing you mean per seat? Because if you're saying $40 for a seat for a sporting event, that's totally reasonable. $400? See, that's why WWE, when they brag about the idea of, or not the idea of, the results of the largest gate, the largest gross event, like, why are fans, if I saw that, can we just, as a collective here, as a fan base, there's one thing we can agree on, okay? It has nothing to do with actually storylines or who you like and don't like. Can we agree on, when we have a corporation that is outwardly bragging about how much money they just made for you while you're at that event, can we boo that, please? It's a slap in the face. It's in bad taste. But you've had the fans, I think they did it at last year's WrestleMania. Everyone's cheering like, yay, we spent more money than anyone has ever spent ever as a collective. Isn't that great? We just gave WWE more money than you did. Ha ha. Like, and take 2 seconds to think about how stupid that is. So can we agree on the one thing? Can we all agree, if they put that graphic up and you're at a live event, that you are a part of an event that has made WWE more gross than any other event for, I don't know, whatever metric they're using, whether it's some PLE or the biggest WrestleMania, the highest grossing WrestleMania, whatever, wherever you're at. Please, can we just, the one thing I'm asking all of us to come to agreement on and to kind of get around is booing that graphic into oblivion if you see it. Okay, was it worth it for us? Absolutely. We were fortunate enough to be able to splurge without going into debt and had a family in the area we could stay with for free. Plus, it was a once-in-a-lifetime moment to be there for Cena's final match. My kid loved it, and he has studied enough about wrestling history and booking, and we listened to your predictions, so he understood why Gunther was going to win, so we weren't disappointed at all. There was really no good way to end it. It just needed to be done. Overall, it was a perfect night, and now I'm probably off the hook taking my kid to another live event for a year or two, but we'll see. Yeah, Kat, we'll see about that. I would certainly, I wouldn't count your chickens before they hatch, right? Because now we're in WrestleMania season. And if you're anywhere in the area for WrestleMania season, then you may be dragged to another event. And they're not cheap. They're certainly not cheap, as you just realized. But it's great you had somebody to stay with. That certainly takes away from some of the expense, having to get a hotel. That probably would have been, I'm guessing, $300-400 just for the one night to stay at a decent place. But still, it's the time and the merch. I don't know if you got any merch, the gas, probably some food that while you're there, right? I mean, it all adds up. It's crazy how quickly it adds up. But the experience is something obviously you'll never be able to experience again. You were a part of being there for John Cena's last match, and only 19,000 and change people can say that in the world. Pretty damn cool. So very, very cool experience, Kat. Thank you for sharing the details. And we'll chat soon. Let's go to Tom. Tom says, happy holidays to you and your family. Well, thank you. You as well. We have Saturday night's main event. And yes, I was one of the fans booing Triple H. Oh, you were there too. Very cool. All right, so you have 2 people in attendance coming back for me. That's awesome. But it wasn't for the Cena match. I agree with how that match ended. I know a lot of people around me, as well as myself, were booing him more than the direction the WWE has gone lately. Oh, for more the direction. From the Cena heel turn debacle to the move to the main event at WrestleMania and the Netflix and ESPN deals, to just some of the creative decisions he's made over the last year. I've not been a fan. The Triple H honeymoon is over. Agreed. We all celebrated in unison. Vince is gone. The silliness is gone. Bring in the adults. Bring in some fresh ideas. And we've seen a lot of things recycled. We've seen a lot of bad storylines. We've seen a lot of bad booking decisions. We've had some mysterious, massive stumbles by WWE, a la WrestleMania 41's main event. One of the biggest blunders in history. And then Cena telling us, who cares? We shouldn't care. Just shut up. Yeah, I'm a big fan of John Cena's work ethic and what he's done. And I know he's just a company cheerleader at this point with his 5-year legacy contract or ambassador contract. I understand that. He's not going to ever put down the company because that's kind of works in the reverse of helping the organization and promoting them. I get it. But if you look at this objectively, it was just, and I will continue to hammer them for this because they still have not said that we screwed up. Yeah, we probably should have done this or that. They are not admitting defeat on that finish. They're still not. Cena won't. Rock certainly won't and has doubled down and then disappeared and he's made everything worse. Triple H, you go, god dang, he's not going to do it. So, yeah, the honeymoon phase of Triple H is over. The fans, I think, right now have a fairly sour taste in their mouth over Triple H. And, as much as we wanted Vince gone, is it really that much better storyline-wise with Triple H? And if you think it is, how? What is so much different or better about Triple H? I will say he does at least promote matches on the next week's show instead of just guessing as to what next week's going to be. And you hear about scripts being torn up 5 minutes before the show and rewritten as the show is going on and the chaos backstage. So Triple H does seem to have more of a week to week vision of what he's doing. But the storylines and the matches and how pro wrestling is presented hasn't fundamentally changed since Vince McMahon left. In fact, I think it's actually gotten worse where they just exposed the product. Do you think Vince ever would have done the Unreal series? We have an email about that coming. No, he never would have. Right? TKO has taken WWE and made a mockery of pro wrestling and made sure that everyone knows wrestling's fake, guys. And just in case there's anybody else out there, what we do isn't real. Just making sure everyone knows. And then we're going to remind the fans who just spent their money on this show that what they're watching isn't real. I think fundamentally it's actually worse than when Vince was in charge. Sure, Vince had his recycled stories. He was repetitive. His sense of humor was horrible. His kind of sophomoric humor he'd want to put in the show every week was just horrible. But you would not have seen ad placements on the mat. I still not getting used to that. The slim gym tables, the constant sponsorships in your face. And I don't want to hear that, well, it's more like UFC. No one complains about UFC or NASCAR or whatever. Yeah, except that's what made pro wrestling special. That's what differentiated them, was that they didn't have marketing all over in your face every 5 seconds. So while people say, well, look at this and that, they're doing it. That's what children say. When they have a friend that's doing something that they shouldn't be doing, they tell their mom and dad, well, no, they're doing it. See, I'm just like Johnny over there. See, so it's okay. That's the same exact logic. For people defending WWE, plastering every sponsor that has ever come in contact with them all over the mat, all over the ringside, all over. I mean, just it's everywhere. The only thing they haven't touched yet are the ring gear of the stars, and that's coming. All right, moving on. The issue I have with Triple H is that the element of surprise is gone. The perfect example is the Masked Man reveal. Everyone's been saying for weeks it's Austin Theory. I thought the perfect way to handle it was to get people guessing all the way until the Rumble, have the Masked Man win the Rumble, and then reveal himself. How awesome would it have been if it were Randy Orton? Then we'd finally get that Randy-Cody match we've been dying for. That would have been good. The Austin Theory reveal did fall flat because everyone knew it was Austin Theory, and the longer they went to only reveal it to be Austin Theory, the more flat it's going to feel, because the longer you wait, the bigger the buildup feels, and the bigger expectation is. And the bar gets raised every week that this person isn't revealed. And you're thinking, oh my God, okay, well, it can't be Austin Theory now. They would have revealed him right away. And it might be Randy Orton or Chris Jericho. And womp, womp, womp. It's Austin Theory. I mean, no disrespect to Austin Theory, but he's not exactly a household name. Building stars can be painful because you're dealing with a lot of stars now that if you were bringing in somebody that's never really watched or hasn't watched wrestling in a while, they're going to go, who's this again? Who? And they get bored very quickly because it's not a big star. You guys might have friends like that too, where they only come in for WrestleMania season when it's like socially acceptable to outwardly be a wrestling fan. And they come in and they're like, well, who's going to be there? Is The Rock going to be there? Is Stone Cold going to be there? He's going to stun somebody? They only care about the big stars that they remember from the Attitude Era. What are they doing? Otherwise, they're going to say, who? Who's that? They're not emotionally invested because Number one, the stars aren't as big as they used to be. They just aren't, even if you are an intricate, very intimate every week you watch every piece of content, you're still not going to be as, I think, emotionally charged as wrestling fans used to be. It's also not as, I think, integrated into the culture as it used to be in the 90s and early 2000s. It's just not. The ratings bear that out too. So I'm going off on tangents today, guys. I apologize. So yeah, Randy Cody, I want that match too. It's there. It's going to happen. It could happen this year at WrestleMania. I would much rather have Randy Cody than Cody and Roman Part 3. We've seen that. We like, what else is there to do? Are we going to have Cody turn heel there? That's really the only thing you can do, is actually have Cody Rhodes be the heel there, where he ends up bringing in somebody to help him, screwing Roman out of the belt where Cody's still champion. Otherwise, what are we doing? Are you going to turn Roman heel again? Or is it just two baby faces that are going to face off? That's doable, but you're going to still force the crowd to choose a side. So you may accidentally cause a heel turn that is unintended. I just don't think it's a good idea. These two can wrestle, and they are very good together. Very good. You know you're going to get a quality match. Yes. But it's more than just about a quality match. It also feels too soon. We've seen these two, how many, this will be what, the third year in a row? Or sorry, not the third year in a row. It'd be the third time in 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. So WrestleMania 39, 40, and this will be 42. Yeah, so a third time in 4 years, too soon. I don't mind if they have a third part here, but don't do it 3 times in 4 years. Okay. I'm even angrier with the fact that we're apparently doing... wow. Well, I really didn't read your next paragraph. That just happens to be fate. You're angry they're doing Roman and Cody again. Again, reportedly, but not confirmed. I could somehow get on board with it if Cody turned heel and we get a different angle on the match than the first two, but apparently Cody has refused to turn and Triple H has granted his wishes. I mean, can you imagine Cody telling Vince, I refuse to turn heel, and Vince just saying, okay. When the boss gives you orders, you do it. Anyways, that's my venting. I hope 2026 is a better year for WWE. Me too. It has fallen. I mean, the tone was set with the WrestleMania 41 main event in April. That just, I think, kind of, it set the tone for the rest of the year. Between the complete flop that, yes, I'm going to continue to hammer in the WrestleMania main event because there's just been no accountability. I think that's the biggest part of it. I would let it go if they just acknowledged it publicly, not have a press conference, but somebody could just do a podcast or something and it publicly acknowledge, hey, yeah, we screwed up. This happened. We had Travis Scott and The Rock no longer available. Here's why. It sucked. We had all these plans and then we had to pivot. Their big word, pivot, right? But they didn't, and they have refused to, and then they complain about the fans complaining. We're the paying goddamn customer, and we don't have a right to, or at least in their minds, we don't have a right to. We just shut up and enjoy the product. You even have Bully Ray on Busted Open Radio complaining about that half the time. Just shut up and enjoy the product. Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's a convincing argument. Well stated. I'm convinced. I guess we'll just apply that to really everything else that we pay money for. We just have no right, unless it's something good to say anything. I guess we'll just implement the old, nothing good to say and say nothing. Yeah, that's how that works with consumer products. Yes, Bully Ray. Yes, Triple H. Shut up. Yeah, I mean, Cody Rhodes, if that's true that he does not want to turn heel, and I believe that, not because I think he's an egomaniac, but actually because it affects your bottom line if you turn heel. He may be very successful as a heel, meaning the crowd reacts to it. It feels fresh. It gets people talking. It allows new opponents to come through, new big baby faces to try to take down Cody. Sure. But here's the other part. Your merchandise check is going to go down because you're not going to sell as much merch because you are a heel. All right, let's get to next email here, DJ Kuzmo. And he said, first, Saturday Night Main Event was a solid show, especially seeing NXT talent like Obafemi, Sol Ruka, alongside TNA's Leon Slater and, of course, Joe Hendry getting featured somewhat of a bigger audience than they were used to. However, the finish in the Cena-Gunther match could be debatable as to how this match should have ended, especially with Triple H getting a lot of heat and boos in Washington, D.C. for Cena being booked to tap out. My opinion is it was the best to show Gunther being the dominant guy and forcing Cena to tap out instead of delivering a symphony of powerbombs to Cena, because from a storyline aspect, Gunther was forced to tap out to main event Jey Uso at WrestleMania, which in my opinion made Gunther look weak. Triple H getting heat doesn't really bother me. I just find it ironic that the same fans cheering for Jay to go over Gunther at WrestleMania are now booing Gunther as he's getting some kind of nuclear heat for forcing Cena to tap out. I'm at peace with the finish, and I hope others will move on from it because Gunther is going to be in WWE for a very long time. Plus, I like the possibility of Gunther retiring future legends in 2026, including AJ Styles at WrestleMania, probably Chris Jericho at Money in the Bank, and Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam in Brock's home state of Minnesota. The business needs heel characters to balance out the baby faces, and Gunther is going to have a dominant 2026. Well, yes, I mean, that's the idea. This is to help Gunther in the future. This is not to help John Cena have a feel-good moment. He's had a gazillion of those in his career. I know a lot of people in person are not happy because they wanted that feel-good moment. But the idea of having a feel-good moment should not have been the expectation. It should be, I'm here to see Cena's last match. That's what you're there for. And in just pro wrestling tradition, the guy who's going to be leaving does the honors. Why wouldn't you? John Cena is not any different than anyone else who has ever retired. I mean, yes, there's been stars that have not been as big that have retired, stars that have been bigger than John Cena, I think, that have retired and have done the honors. That is what you do on the way out. John Cena winning. I know it's feel good, but guess what? He's gone, done, forever. Now you have Gunther, who's sitting on a massive loss off of a loss at WrestleMania, losing the championship to Jey Uso, who they then subsequently stripped 6 weeks later. Doesn't look good for Gunther, who's still going to be there for years to come. I know it's not what people want to hear, but it's the truth. And truth will always supersede what people want to see or hear. But yeah, Gunther then going on to face AJ, retire AJ, who's going to retire next year, likely from what we understand. Brock may retire next year. That's a great way to have Gunther go out. He's the guy that retires the older generation. That's what his legacy is. And what about when the career killer meets the legend killer? I mean, when eventually Gunther and Randy Orton go at it, look out. Okay, so Austin Theory's the mystery guy. I found this a bit underwhelming since everyone in the IWC was saying for weeks that it would be him. Austin Theory hasn't done anything significant since Triple H took over the creative team in 2022. Plus, there needs to be a reason why Theory, of all people, is booked at the forefront of the storyline, while guys like Montez Ford have been placed on the proverbial back burner for years and in not getting some sort of singles run. To me, it's a wait-and-see kind of thing with Austin Theory in this story. But, like I said, I'm not too thrilled about this booking decision. Thank you, DJ. And, yes, we will get to the Joe Henry report. Now, nobody's excited about this. I mean, how can anyone be excited about? What's there to get excited about right now on its face? There's nothing Austin Theory has done that you would say to yourself, oh, my God, imagine if Austin Theory gets this. You know, if it's Austin Theory, how cool would that be? No one's saying that because no one has a reason to say that. But I appreciate you being patient. Not that I'm speaking on behalf of WWE, but just in terms of just people not having any patience as from a fan to a fan, right? I like that you are willing to see this through. And that's what we should do. We should see this through. And while it's not an exciting reveal, it's very ho-hum. That's how stars are made. This is the star creation process that no one wants to go through. Everybody wants just the big stars, the headline guys and gals, the household names. They don't want to go through this pain process, but this is part of the deal. This is how you create the next generation of stars. You got to take a chance. You got to have guys that you wouldn't expect that don't have a lot of name value start to build that name value. You got to start somewhere, you know? And so that's what Austin Theory is being positioned to do. I mean, think about Braun Breaker just 6 months ago. What his name value meant, what he was doing in the business, spearing people maybe here and there, but he hadn't cut any good promos yet. He hasn't really made an impact on a high level in the main roster. Then he gets paired with Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins gets injured. He has a couple of great promos, really shows some potential in what he can do in the future. And all of a sudden, when he comes out, you pay attention. So, all righty. Thank you, DJ. Let's go to Wayne in Florida. He says, this is my first time commenting, but a follower of your podcast. Enjoy yours, Amanda's reviews on Raw and SmackDown. As a blind wrestling fan, you guys really lay it out straight for the listeners. whoever has creative control over the women's wrestling on their rosters should help them out with their stories and make it more creative and not boring. Hopefully, Gunther and Austin Theory will have successful follow-throughs. I'm a John Cena fan, but understand the outcome of Saturday's main event. If a star is leaving, they need to boost the upcoming star like Taker did for Roman on Taker's last match. Now for my bad thoughts. Triple H needs to step back. And remember, his roots as a wrestler within the business and then his business personality and how they can pat their pockets with money, that's why they wanted Vince back, because he at least understood storylines and followed through with them. Thanks for letting me listen, and enjoy your holidays. Well, of course. I mean, enjoy your holidays, Wayne, and hope all's well and nice and toasty warm down there in Florida. There's a lot here. I'll just kind of cherry pick a couple things. So Vince and the follow through, I think you're giving Vince a little bit too much credit there. I'm a Vince McMahon fan from a professional standpoint of what he's accomplished and everything. But towards the end of his career or in WWE and end of his head of creative run, there was a lot of kind of really not thinking through stories and doing things for no reason. And Vince wasn't exactly known for follow through, I have to say, especially towards the end. But I'll give him credit on building some of the biggest stars that the industry's ever seen. So there is that. Vince is a much more proven commodity than Triple H has been thus far. Now, right now, the heat is on Triple H because it's the freshest thing in everybody's mind. But don't forget, not too long ago, everyone, like I said earlier in the show, was just praising Triple H and cheering him and saying, oh my, yeah, this is going to be great. No more Vince. And amazing how quickly he has fallen in the eyes of fans because we're fickle. Fans are fickle. If they see one thing that we don't like, we instantly, we start throwing a hissy fit. That's kind of how we are. It's for better or worse. It's how it's going to be. But at the same time, Triple H has been more accessible on TV than any other previous head of creative, ever. Outside of Vince McMahon in the late 90s with the Stone Cold feud where he was constantly on television, Vince McMahon's character was also, he was involved in the storylines that he was creating. Triple H is just this outside figure that is running things from the gorilla position that comes out and doesn't try to play a character. He is just Paul Levesque. He's not Triple H anymore. So it's not like he's involved in the storylines. He's creating them and then coming out to immediately get the feedback. So he's instantly accessible. If the fans want to hammer him, you're hearing that because Triple H just can't stay off our television screens. I don't need to see him. And yet there he is. PLE after PLE with absolutely no reason to be there. I don't need to see him there, but he's there nonetheless. Thanks, Wayne. All righty, let's go to Hector. And let's see. Hector says, wanted to send one mailbag before the end of the year. I hope you and your family have a good one. Thank you, you as well. Gunther has retired 2 legends so far, and AJ is set to retire in a year, isn't he? There's also rumors of Brock Lesnar retiring at SummerSlam. Do you think Gunther is slowly becoming the new legend killer? Well, there is quite a theme here today with Gunther, and the answer is I don't think he's becoming the next legend killer. He's not following in Randy Orton's steps. Career killer? I don't know how to really label him. There's got to be some kind of label like legend killer, career killer, even though he is retiring guys that are already announcing ahead of time that's their final match. He has yet to retire a guy that has put his career on the line against him. Big difference. He's just the final opponent. He doesn't necessarily create the action of retirement. It's already in motion. He's just the final guy that those men have decided to face. So, okay. Rey Mysterio is also close, but I'm sure that's something saved for Dom. Gunther taking out other legends could eventually lead to him having a match with Orton. New Legend Killer versus OG Legend Killer. Thanks for fantasy booking. Yes, fantasy booking is part of the fun of a wrestling fan. And I kind of already, not to skip over and not acknowledge your statement here, but that's exactly what I have been talking about with Orton. I mean, Orton and Gunther could eventually be a big match if they build Gunther as the career killer versus the legend killer. I mean, you could easily do that. Yes. Thanks, Hector. Alrighty, let's go. What are we going to? Let's go to Attorney Tut. He says, it's been a while. I've checked in as unfortunately my young sons have lost interest in WWE. As you've correctly noted, Cena comes off as a calculating politician whose interview answers are full of non-controversial corporate speak, to the point that it's made me question his authenticity more broadly as of late. That was front of mind when I watched him give that little smirk and nonchalant tap out to Gunther. In my opinion, he completely undermined the goal of putting over Gunther on his way out. If he wanted to authentically pay it forward to a younger wrestler, then he would have actually sold the sleeper and tapped out in pain. Instead, it was clear he only tapped out because it was the right, quote, right thing to do for the company, but he wasn't genuinely elevating Gunther. Due to that smirk tap, I don't think anyone has experienced a believable passing of the torch moment. Okay, before I go to your next paragraph here, I think that's an excellent point. Because while that smirk was an acknowledgement of him taking, quote unquote, as he said on Cody's podcast just recently, taking his last breath as a pro wrestler, like that's, I mean, we all knew what he was doing. It was an acknowledgement through that smirk that, hey, yeah, I know I'm on my way out. You guys aren't going to like this. I've had a hell of a career. Thank you. Goodbye. That's what that smirk, I think, is how you would interpret it. But you're right. That smirk also kind of undersold what that move was supposed to be doing to him. And this is where you and I put pro wrestling believability over anything else that's happening. Because if you're going to do something as big as this, where John Cena hasn't tapped out in 21 years, 21, I went over that in a previous show, and it's in his retirement match that he taps out, why would you smirk tap out? Why would you do that? You think that's better than not going all the way? Like, if you're going to do this, go all in. Meaning, you're struggling, your beat red face. Cena's face wasn't even red. It was just, he was just sitting there like he might as well have been in a beach chair with somebody putting their arm around his neck. That's how devastating it looked. And now this is going to get me on a tangent. I'm trying to reel it back in because these are the kinds of things that bug the hell out of me. But you're exactly right. He half-assed it. I know he thinks he was doing it to be a wink and a nod to fans, and you can interpret it as you want. But the idea that we have to interpret it at all and that somebody is smiling on their way out is a complete and utter abomination of what pro wrestling should be, which is, if you're going to do something this big, own it, make it believable. Otherwise, you're hurting the guy that's still there. You could make that argument. Good stuff. Okay, one more. Throw in the ready-made video montage, and I felt like I was watching a retirement party for some guy in my accounting department, as opposed to a fierce competitor who just lost his battle. Keep the hugs, balloons, and etc. in the back, and let the fans watch a warrior absorb their admiration one last time. I railed on Triple H for coming out after WrestleMania 40 and his unnecessary appearance. Here was even worse. He seems so focused on, quote, overly producing these special moments that they don't feel organic or special at all. Well, damn. You and I are cut from the same cloth when it comes to the pro wrestling presentation. Unfortunately, Kevin, you and I are we're the old timers now. I don't know how old you are. I'm going to guess you're somewhere around my age of 40, give or take. You're in my generation of how we want to view pro wrestling and how it should be presented because it's worked forever. And now they've really made it a gymnastics presentation with a bunch of lights and advertisements. That's what they've really made pro wrestling now. But at its core, we still love it, but how it's being presented, we don't. And this is one of those things that you and I don't like. I mean, Triple H coming out of WrestleMania 40 was stupid. I didn't like everybody coming out of WrestleMania 40. I thought that was, despite the fact that WrestleMania 40 is critically acclaimed to be one of the best endings to WrestleMania of all time, I don't believe that. I have issues with how WrestleMania 40 ended. Not that I didn't think Roman needed to drop the belt, but simply for the fact that there's all these people that have, like, why are we coming out here breaking the fourth wall? You immediately have one of the, quote unquote, one of the best endings in WrestleMania history, and then you have that completely shattered, that believability completely shattered by having everyone come out at the end like, what a great performance. See, what you and I value in pro wrestling is gone. You and I value believability. We value what happens in the ring above all else. And sure, there are times to break the fourth wall. When people die, right? Like Eddie Guerrero. The Chris Benoit tragedy. Owen Hart tragedy. When people die, absolutely. You have all the video packages you want. That death supersedes pro wrestling. It should. But when I'm watching pro wrestling, in pro wrestling, and there's nothing more serious, like a passing going on, don't give me this stuff about Triple H coming out and everybody else coming out with the balloons, and then we have it's like a slideshow presentation of that person's life. Like, what are we doing? Yeah, now you're making me sour on the John Cena retirement. Oh, man. Thank you. Oh, boy. And I hope your sons get back into WWE. It is WrestleMania season almost, so perhaps they'll get pulled back in. The Royal Rumble tends to do that, and maybe that'll happen this year. All right. Well, that'll do it for the emails. Let's jump into the voicemails and see where that takes us.
This is DJ Kuzmo back at it again on your Mailbag show. Records you live on a Wednesday morning, and you know what time it is. It's time to
Say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry.
That's right, folks. Joe Hendry is his name, as I take it to my 75th episode of the Drudge Report. And like always, coming to you live from an undisclosed location. And as usual, before I get to Joe Hendry, let me take you to what took place last week on the episode of TNA Pro Wrestling as we continue the storyline of the TNA versus NXT in their collaboration with the NXT invasion in TNA. Last week's episode was the fallout from TNA Final Resolution, or as you would say, TNA's final event of 2025 before they cross over into 2026. We opened the show with the self-proclaimed king of TNA, Mr. Frankie Kazarian, and of course he is the current TNA World Champion. He declares that he will become the face of AMC when TNA debuts on AMC on Thursday, January 15, 2026. This was part of the big deal between AMC and TNA to have TNA's live episodes on Thursday nights on AMC Plus, the streaming service, and of course AMC, the cable channel. But then he gets interrupted by Mike Santana, and he says that he will receive his contractual rematch for the TNA World title, and that will be happening on TNA's first pay-per-view of the year, TNA Genesis, that will be on January 17th, live from Garland, Texas. However, before Mike Santana gets his rematch at TNA Genesis, he is seeking revenge on the NXT Outsiders who cost him the TNA World title when he lost to Frankie Kazarian on the November 13th episode of TNA Pro Wrestling. And that revenge plot will take place in an epic 10-man tag team match in a steel cage on the December 18th episode of TNA Pro Wrestling. And here's where Santana will be tag teaming alongside 4 other TNA stars as they go up against the NXT Outsiders, like I said, in a steel cage match. This is not a War Games match. This is just a regular 10-man tag team match, 5-on-5, inside a good old-fashioned steel cage. Now we get to the NXT Outsiders as they vow to continue their takeover of TNA. Stax, who of course is the newest TNA International Champion and a current member of the NXT Outsiders, explains why he knocked it out his father-in-law last week, Mr. Santino Marella, during the brawl of NXT and TNA on TNA's Final Resolution. He said the reason was that Santino did not want him to propose to his daughter, which of course was Ariana Grace. And the other part to that was that he did not want Stax to become the new TNA International Champion. Now we fast forward to an NXT versus TNA match with the winner earning an advantage for the NXT versus TNA 5-on-5 steel cage match. This match included Lexis King of NXT versus Matt Cardona, formerly known as Zack Ryder of TNA. This match exactly lasted only 5 minutes as Lexis King gets the victory to help him get the advantage for his team in this steel cage match on the December 18th episode of TNA Pro Wrestling. But post-match, we get a beatdown as all members of the NXT Outsiders beat down on Matt Cardona. This leads also to Lexis King using his cane, his infamous cane, to attack Matt Cardona's left arm and injuring him. Steve Maclin, the former TNA International Champion, comes for the save as he helps out Matt Cardona, but it was too little too late as Matt Cardona was quote-unquote suddenly injured with this attack to his left arm. And now with Matt Cardona being unable to compete in the steel cage match due to his quote-unquote sudden injury to his left arm, the question remains, who will be Matt Cardona's replacement for Team TNA in the steel cage match for the December 18th episode of TNA Pro Wrestling? We get the sudden news later on in the show that none other than the Director of Authority, Mr. Santino Marella, made the big announcement that he will replace Matt Cardona for Team TNA in the steel cage match. And it's official, folks. NXT versus TNA in a steel cage match, a good old-fashioned 5-on-5, and these are the members. It will include for TNA, Mike Santana, Santino Marella, Steve Macklin, Matt Hardy, and Jeff Hardy. And for NXT, the NXT Outsiders of Lexis King, Stax, Brooks Jensen, and Tyson and Tyreek of High Rise. Now let's get to Joe Hendry and his surprise appearance this past Saturday in Washington, D.C. at Saturday night's main event. But I gotta say, at first, I had a feeling, just a deep feeling, that Joe Hendry was going to make an appearance, but I just didn't know at what capacity because he was not scheduled to have a match since they only had 4 matches on this card. Anyway, let's get to the moment as we see The Miz in the ring stating that he was the main character in Cena's history. He felt that the Last Time Is Now tournament was focusing on the up-and-coming superstars and not being focused on him, the same guy that defeated John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania. I guess it's the same thing that The Miz always talks about, kind of relive the past of those moments that he defeated John Cena at WrestleMania. The Miz demands respect. However, instead of getting respect, we get the appearance of R-Truth, or should I say Ron Cena, John Cena's little brother. And Ron Cena says to The Miz, "I saw what you did, the footage, Miz, in the Last Time Is Now tournament. You did something inappropriate with Nick Aldis's balls. You took somebody's opportunity, and the person's opportunity you took is right here in this ball." The Miz grabs Nick Aldis's ball and looks at it and opens it and reads the name, Joe Hendry. And then all of a sudden, say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry makes an appearance at the ringside apron to the utter huge pop of the crowd in Washington, D.C. The Miz orders the music to be turned off. Then we see The Miz going for a swing to Joe Hendry, but Joe Hendry punches back and hits The Miz. Joe Hendry goes for a fall-away slam to The Miz, followed by a kip-up. Then we see both Joe Hendry and Ron Cena do the Joe Hendry spin. After that, we see they do the "You Can't See Me" as both Ron Cena and Joe Hendry do the double 5-knuckle shuffle, or as you could say, the 10-knuckle shuffle to The Miz. Then Joe Hendry goes for the standing ovation choke slam to The Miz, and then Joe Hendry goes for the cover as Ron Cena makes the pinfall count. And 1, 2, 3. Joe Hendry defeats The Miz, but this wasn't even a real match. Anyway, Hendry wins! Hendry wins! As everybody in the crowd in Washington, D.C. does the Joe Hendry wave, including Ron Cena, aka R-Truth. And this was the 3rd appearance that Joe Hendry made on a, I guess you could say, PLE/semi-PLE from his first appearance earlier this year at the Royal Rumble. Then he made his appearance at WrestleMania 41 this year, and now in John Cena's final semi-PLE at Saturday night's main event, Joe Hendry makes an appearance even though he was not on the card. He was not scheduled to be in a match. He made an appearance in this comedic segment with The Miz because The Miz is he's such a fall guy. He's such a good soldier. But I have to say, I got what I was thinking about, and that was Joe Hendry making a surprise appearance. And always remember this, folks, if you continue to say his name, he might just randomly appear. And he appeared last night on NXT. But before I mention Joe Hendry being included in the Fatal 4-Way for the #1 contendership in the main event, I want to quickly mention a couple of things that took place on this episode of NXT. A surprise title change involving Thea Hale. We also had a surprise finish in the main event in the Fatal 4-Way. And of course, we had another NXT and TNA collaboration. But before NXT got started, Joe Hendry put out a video on NXT socials as he was seen in the Performance Center gym on a stationary bike. Just recapping the moments of this year that he made surprise appearances at the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and most recently this past Saturday at Saturday night's main event in Washington, D.C. However, Joe Hendry says that even though he had all of those types of moments, he wants to finish this year of 2025 strong by winning the Fatal 4-Way to become the #1 contender for the NXT title. Joe Hendry believes. Now let's get to this very surprising title change, which involved Thea Hale, and this was for the NXT Women's North American Championship. And by the way, this match opens the show of Blake Monroe versus Thea Hale. This match lasted 7 minutes and 19 seconds. But as we fast forward towards the tail end of the match, where we get to the controversial finish, after when Thea Hale delivered a World's Strongest Slam to Blake Monroe, she then goes for a somersault senton on Blake Monroe, followed by the springboard senton. Then she goes for the cover on Blake Monroe. The referee counts 1, 2, 3. However, it didn't look like Blake Monroe's shoulder was on the mat at the last second before the third count. The ref signals that Blake won the match to retain her championship as her music was playing. But there was a bit of confusion with the referee and the announcer Mike Rome of NXT as to find out if Blake Monroe had her shoulder up at the last second. We then see one of the NXT production workers hand the title to the referee, but then the referee hands the title to Thea Hale. And surprisingly and kind of bizarre, we have a new NXT North American Women's Champion in Thea Hale. During the show and a couple of hours after the show went off the air, there have been a couple of online chatter about this controversial finish, stating that how this was not supposed to happen and this was some sort of botch on the referee. Later on the episode of NXT, we did get a backstage segment of Thea Hale being interviewed as she was celebrating her surprise title victory. Blake Monroe comes in as she was crying and interrupts Thea Hale by saying this was a mistake by the referee and he should be fired. But whatever the case may be, let's see what happens, whether this was a work or a shoot, as the storyline between these two of Thea Hale and Blake Monroe continues in possibly a rematch in the NXT Women's North American Championship. But congratulations, surprisingly, bizarrely, to Thea Hale. Now let me quickly mention this brief NXT and TNA collaboration which took place during Ethan Page's segment after when he was interrupted by Stax and Ariana Grace as they were vying for Ethan and Chelsea Green's AAA Mixed Tag Team titles. Ethan then gets interrupted yet again, this time by the TNA star and former TNA World Champion Moose. Moose says that he's pissed off of the NXT takeover that's been happening on his home turf in TNA and the fact that he's ticked it off that Stax, an NXT outsider, is the new TNA International Champion. However, Moose says that he's here to take one of NXT's most prestigious titles in the NXT North American title back to TNA. But Ethan cuts him off and says that you need to talk to the NXT general manager before you even think about having a match. But then Moose says that he already spoke to the NXT general manager, Mrs. Ava Raine, and he got permission from the director of authority from TNA, Mr. Santino Marella, and this match will be taking place on Tuesday, December 30th, the final NXT of 2025, and it will be Ethan Page versus Moose. NXT versus TNA for the NXT North American Championship. Let's get to the main event, the Fatal 4-Way, with the winner becoming the new #1 contender for Obafemi's NXT Championship. This Fatal 4-Way included TNA's and X Division champion Leon Slater, Dark State's own Dion Lennox, Miles Bourne, and my guy Joe Hendry. This match lasted 16 minutes and 28 seconds with a very surprising finish, and let's get to it. As we fast forward to the tail end of the match, after when we saw Joe Hendry deliver a fall-away slam to Miles Bourne, then a kip-up, we then see Joe Hendry deliver a fall-away slam to Dion Lennox. Then another kip-up. Joe Hendry goes for an angle slam to Miles Bourne. Then Joe Hendry clotheslines Dion outside the ring. Then Joe goes for the standing ovation choke slam to Miles Bourne. But then out of nowhere, here comes Leon Slater off the top rope, but Joe Hendry catches him and tosses him outside the ring. It looked like at this point that Joe Hendry had a lot of momentum on his side, possibly that he could have won the match. But then something very interesting happens. Back in the ring, Joe delivers a very unique fireman's carry into a standing ovation chokeslam to Miles Bourne. Hendry goes for the cover, but before the referee could count to 3, Dion Lennox pulls Joe Hendry's legs as Joe Hendry goes outside the ring. Now Joe and Dion begin to brawl at at ringside heading into the entrance ramp. However, back in the ring, we get Leon Slater as he's at the top turnbuckle, and then he's about to go for his perfectly swanton 450 splash to Miles Bourne, and he quickly goes for the cover, and 1, 2, 3. And we have a new #1 contender for Obafemi's NXT Championship, and that guy is TNA's own and the current X Division champion, Leon Slater. And this matchup will happen on Tuesday, January 6, 2026, live from the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida at NXT's New Year's Evil. And that, of course, is for the NXT Championship of Obafemi versus TNA's own Leon Slater. But always remember this, folks. If you continue to say their name in Thea Hale and Joe Hendry, they might just randomly appear. Always remember to believe, say his name. Always remember the words that Joe Hendry says anytime, any place, at any show. And most importantly, always remember to do this.
Wave your hands from side to side and say, oh, I believe in Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry is so prestigious.
Once again, this is your guy, DJ Kuzmo. Have a blessed week. Be kind to one another. Stay safe, my friends. Believe and peace.
All right, DJ, thank you for your detailed analysis every single week. I know that many of us find it very valuable, and it's a Cliff Notes version of TNA NXT wrapped into one. What's going on with Joe Hendry? I appreciate it, and I know that. Again, certainly a lot of the listeners do. You heard it earlier in the show. So thank you, TNA Genesis. That coverage is good as well. I think you're bringing some listeners into watching the show. I know I've started to peek into it when I have my time, which doesn't exist, but I appreciate that and your efforts every single week. And keeping an eye on Joe Hendry, who continues to tease us with that main roster debut and has yet to really dive in head first. But thank you for all of your analysis. The match details and everything else that a lot of us, to be honest, and the ratings bear it out, don't watch some of the products that aren't just mainstream WWE Raw SmackDown. It's good to hear about the upcoming stars that could be coming to WWE. And also, hey, I'm still holding out hope. I know this had nothing to do with your voicemail, DJ, but with MJF's return to AEW, God dang, I want him in WWE. I understand he's a big fish in a small pond over there, relatively speaking. But when MJF finally comes to WWE, the explosion that's going to take place from the crowd is going to be second to none. MJF coming to WWE, to hear him, and it's such a shame we couldn't ever see him and John Cena go face to face on the mic. That to me is, if you're just not just matchup, the matchup in the match I'm sure would have been fine, but you talk about this generation's greatest talker versus the previous generation's greatest talker. I believe John Cena is the best promo that in my generation, he is the best promo when he gets serious, not his silliness that he does and try to be funny. I'm talking when he's on. And MJF, I think, is on that level. And I would have loved to have seen them in a 20-minute or even 15-minute promo battle. That is my fantasy promo battle, is MJF versus John Cena. It would have been, you just otherworldly. And unfortunately, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I guess it still could, because I don't think WWE is done showcasing John Cena. John Cena, yes, he's done in the ring. He's absolutely done in the ring. But I guess it's still possible they have just a promo battle where nothing results from it. But it's just so good and would be such good TV, and the clips that would come out of it that would go viral. Oh my God. Oh my God. So I don't mean to push aside anything you said. It had nothing to do with this. I understand, DJ, but it made me think of it. Alrighty. One more voicemail, and then I think we'll call it a night.
Hey, it's Kyle from Baltimore. So I wanted to talk about, this whole John Cena controversy situation. It's hard because, I can understand the frustration for the fans in the audience who wanted to see Cena win. I thought Cena should have won, right? It's like his final match. He probably should have won. And the way he lost was a little unnecessary and kind of stupid. But, I guess for me, since I'm not, even though I grew up watching Cena, he wasn't my ultimate favorite wrestler as a kid. That was Edge and Rey Mysterio for me. So even though Cena was around, I just started watching Cena until I was 15. I'll say that. But point is that, for me anyway, I wasn't super emotional. Now he should have won. I can understand the frustrations, but I guess when it comes down to the booking aspect, who knows who made that call? Maybe it was Cena. People say it was Triple H because it goes down back to him, but it was Cena's choice because he could choose to win or lose, since he has the right to have that feeling, because he said he was, even though he said that he doesn't want to make the decision, it's still his choice, because I think he earned that right. I would think so. If this was Cena's choice, he has to live with that, and I kind of feel bad for Triple H in a way, because if it wasn't his decision, then I feel bad for him. But if it was, then it's like it just plays out for the entire year that has happened with this year WWE. Now, personally, I think Raw in particular has been really fun to watch. SmackDown has been garbage, but I can't say wrestling was terrible this year. Personally, for me, I don't think so. I think Becky had a really good year. I enjoyed her feud with Lyra. Anyway, and I love Io and just the women's division as a whole. I think what has been good that I've enjoyed this year. But yeah, for me, again, I like the match. I didn't like the match. I am upset that he lost, but I'm not going to go on Twitter and complain about it, because it does. At the end of the day, for me, that seems kind of a waste. I can understand the frustrations, but to say you're going to quit watching wrestling, a lot of people aren't. That's what just people say for some reason, which I get, because I was that way before in the past when I was younger. But I guess for me, since I'm not mostly invested into Cena, I'm not going to, be complaining about it that hard. Do I want a different outcome? Of course I do. I want Cena to win, but it is what it is. I can understand people's frustrations. So, I don't know, but I don't know what's the point of me calling.
All right, Kyle. Well, it seems like that 3-minute rule got you. But I got the gist of what you're saying. You didn't want to go on Twitter, but you didn't want to see Cena lose. You thought it was kind of pointless. And you and I don't agree on that, and that's fine. There is certainly, I understand. Here's the thing. I understand why people feel that way. It would have been a nice, perfect send-off, the cherry on top of one of the best careers of all time. I get it. I can sympathize with that, especially if you spent all that money and you're expecting John Cena to win. I get it. But the greater good is to have Gunther win. Now, Attorney Tut previously brought up something that now annoys me about that, even though Gunther won, the smirk. That just totally, if you're truly in a position where you're tapping, are you going to be smiling? No. Yeah, of course you're not. So that now bothers me to no end. So thanks for that. But no, I understand, Kyle. It's totally understandable why you thought John Cena should win. And would it have totally crushed Gunther's career? No, but it wouldn't have helped it. That's for sure. With all eyes on Gunther, more eyes on Gunther than any time in his career, you're going to have him lose. I think more damage would have been done than good. But Kyle, thank you. No, I totally get it. I appreciate it. And you're maybe one of the few people that have said, I'm not going to go on Twitter and complain. That's a very non-Gen Z thing to say. That's all that this generation and my generation, millennials, are guilty of. We just go on and complain, and we just complain. And, like you said, so many people threaten to stop watching wrestling. It's almost like if I was WWE, I'd be like, oh, okay, well then don't watch. We don't want people who hate our product to watch it. Okay, fine. Don't threaten me with a good time. So that thread has always made me laugh. But thank you, Kyle. Thank you all the emailers, and of course, DJ Kuzmo, for your contributions every week. And that'll do it for me on this Friday. Hope everyone enjoys the weekend. Get your last minute shopping in, and follow us on X if you want at wrestling_audio. You can just search WWE Podcast there. We're the blue checkmark one. You can also head on over to Patreon and go ad free at patreon.com/WWE Podcast if you want to get rid of all the damn ads you've heard throughout the show. That'll do it. Thanks, everybody. I'll be back on Sunday with your week in review. Until then, take care.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.